Hello and good evening, everybody. And tonight on this episode of Album Rant, I would like to return to English rock and roll artist Motorhead. And I am going to focus my attention tonight on their third studio album, released in the year 1979, entitled Bomber. And this is going to be the second episode of Album Rant where I am reviewing a Motorhead album. The first time was quite a while ago, actually, and I reviewed their Ace of Spades album. And between the years 1979 and 1980, they had three really strong, hard-hitting classic albums. And this is the second of that unofficial trilogy of greatness. But anyways, I'm going to kind of give you a background on where these guys came from and how we got to where we are right now. But as you may know, they were helmed and basically ran, I guess. The driving force behind the band was the unfortunately late bassist slash vocalist Lemmy Kilmister, may he rest in peace. And initially, he was a member out of a band called Hawkwind, and he did not last with them for very long because there came a point where he was actually kicked out of the band for drug usage. He was arrested in Canada for drug usage, and so they basically had their fill of him, and he was given the boot. And during his time with Hawkwind, he wrote and recorded a song called Motorhead. And if you're interested in hearing that version, it is available on many of their greatest hits albums. But anyways, he decided to, again, form a new band, and he had a long revolving door of band members in those early days. But he eventually settled on two other members, so for a while they were a trio, and they were by the names of Fast Eddie Clarke on lead guitar, and Phil the Philthy Animal Taylor on drums. And initially, they were contracted by United Artists, and they tried to record an album initially in the year 1976, but the record company really did not like it. But a lot of those recordings were later re-released in 1979 on kind of an unofficial album called On Parole, and if you want to hear that, it is very readily available, so it's out there if you really want to listen to it. But anyways, by the year 1977, they did release their very first album, simply entitled Motorhead, their debut album. And I thought it was an okay album. I own it on vinyl, and it is definitely worth a listen, but to be brutally honest, it was not quite up to the level that these guys would later reach, so it is often considered to be one of their weaker albums. But I mean, the title track, which again is a re-recording of a song that Lemmy performed and wrote when he was in Hawkwind, it was on that debut album, and of course it is a concert staple because, well, it's the band's title track. We also had songs such as Iron Horse, White Line Fever, Keep Us on the Road, and they did do a cover of Train Kept a Rollin', which was also covered by Aerosmith. Now, to be brutally honest, and we kind of need some tough love here, the Motorhead version of Train Kept a Rollin' came after the Aerosmith version, and well, I kind of wish they hadn't done it because it's not nearly as good as the Aerosmith version. And every time I hear it, I kind of just wish I was hearing the Aerosmith version. So, we can't all bowl a 300 all the time. But anyways, like I said, the debut album was okay, but it was really not indicative of what the band was capable of. But then in 1978, they found themselves a new manager. They found themselves a new record company, and they released a single of a cover of Chuck Berry's Louie Louie. Dun 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Louie Louie. Hey. Yeah, I did my best there. Actually, I wasn't even trying. I'll take that back. And I don't know the full lyrics to Louie Louie, and it wasn't really that great of a cover. I'm really not that big of a Chuck Berry fan. But regardless, after that, in 1979, they released their second album entitled Overkill. So obviously, going from that debut to Overkill, 2 years had passed. So of course the band had really changed quite a bit, and it is very readily apparent right from the get-go because this is a much faster, a much more hard-hitting, heavy album, and it had some of their very best material ever, such as Overkill, the title track, Stay Clean, Capricorn, Damage Case, Tear You Down, Metropolis, and Limb for Limb. And these guys were not part of the new wave of British heavy metal. They missed it by a few years or so. If they had started putting out albums maybe like 2 or 3 years later, they would have been considered probably part of the new wave of British heavy metal, but just what happens, happened. But even then, even putting all that aside, Lemmy has gone on record saying that they are not a heavy metal band. They are just a rock and roll band. Okay, I'll respect that. I understand. I could definitely see how some people may feel otherwise, but if you say you're not a heavy metal band, you're not a heavy metal band. So anyways, after that, later that year, they released their third studio release, released in 1979, and that brings me to where we are right now. The title of the album is called Bomber, and out of that holy trilogy of Motorhead albums, Bomber is usually considered to be the weakest, and it's actually kind of a shame because there is some great material on it, but they put this album out very fast, very quickly, right after Overkill, and I think Lemmy and many of the bandmates actually kind of feel that it would have been better to kind of give it some time, get used to the songs, do some more practice and rehearsals, but regardless, we got what we got, and I am very thankful for it. This album is produced by Jimmy Miller, who apparently also produced some Rolling Stones albums. And when he was working with the Stones, he was introduced to drugs, apparently, from what I understand. And there is kind of a story about that. But yes, let's go ahead and check this thing out. So inside, do we have anything? No, we don't. We just have a record. Then on the back, we have some rather interesting artwork. We have the picture of the band performing right there. These are the guys. We have Lemmy, the one and only. Again, may he rest in peace. We have Philthy Animal Taylor on drums and Fast Eddie Clarke on the guitar. And yes, there's the very, very bombastic Bomber font right there. We have some credits, but let's get to what everyone is really here for, the track list. And it starts off with side 1. And side 1 kicks off with Dead Men Tell No Tales. And despite what you might be thinking, this is not about pirates. It's actually about Jimmy Miller's experience with drugs, because as I said, he was really starting to become under the influence of heroin right around the time of this recording, and it really resulted in some very erratic behavior. And from what I read, it actually, they found him one time passed out behind the wheel of his car, which is not a good place to be if you're high on heroin. But it's all about the effects of heroin on the body and the mind. And this one, just like Overkill, starts out swinging right out of the gate. It has a very electric, very heavy guitar intro, and then the band just progressively comes in. I mean, I guess I should back up and say the intro to Overkill was led by the drums, while this one's led by the guitar. But regardless, it's a very fast, very heavy number, and I really, really like it. Some may call it mid-tempo. There's an argument to be made there, but regardless, it's very fast. And again, some of the band's heaviest work. This is one of their more well-known songs, and it does appear on many greatest hits albums. Now, the bridge, I really gotta give it this. The bridge has a very heavy guitar solo. Fast Eddie Clarke was really amazing. He was a great guitarist, and I just gotta say, at least on these early records, the guitar solos and the drums and the bass and the vocals, they all really complement each other and go together and jive very, very well, which I really like. Now again, I think this sounds a lot like a metal song, but remember, it's not. It's a rock and roll song. But we have breaking up or breaking through, breaking something's all we can do. Shoot straight, yeah, travel far. Stone crazy's all we ever are. But I don't care for lies, and I won't tell you twice, because when all else fails, dead men tell no tales. And yeah, great opener, really love it. So then we come to the second song, which is called Lawman. And this one is a little bit slower. I would definitely call this mid-tempo, but it's also still very heavy. And the bass, man, the bass is really great on this one. Lemmy was a very talented musician. It's too bad we lost him, but apparently the lyrics are taking shots at the police, as if we need more of that. But anyways, we have your evil eye every night, cruising slow, flashing lights. They're together in the dark, but it ain't no friend, just another scared narc. I know you. And then lawman, lawman, lawman. Something else that I really like about this song is, like, right before the chorus, I think it's right before the chorus, maybe in the pre-chorus, the rhythm kind of goes in a different direction just for a little bit. We get this da-dong, 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 then it just goes right back into that mid-tempo rhythm, and I just think that was very well done. I mean, if other artists tried this, or even if Motorhead tried it, there's a chance it could have sounded very erratic and just all over the place. There are some songs that I've reviewed before that have very different segments within them that don't complement each other well, but I think that little pre-chorus that they have in this song, I think it does go with the rest of the song very well, and again, it's just so heavy, I love it. But yeah, I mean, Lawman is a great song. So yeah, this song, Lawman actually doesn't have a definitive ending. It actually kind of fades and segues right into the next number, which is Sweet Revenge, track number 3. And you would not expect Motorhead to do something, as artsy as that. That's more like something Pink Floyd would do, but hey, you know, they did what they did. But Sweet Revenge is much slower. This song definitely sounds a lot different than the first two. It's, like I said, much slower and kind of sludgy and moody, actually, which is a very interesting approach because they primarily do not really write songs like that, but still, regardless, the guitar work is very electric, very heavy, and very hard-hitting. I mean, a song like this from a band called Motorhead could have really gone south in a very bad direction, but it doesn't. And yeah, I really like Sweet Revenge. But things really do start to pick up after that. I mean, Lawman and Sweet Revenge kind of delved into different territory than what Motorhead is usually accustomed to. But Sharpshooter picks it right back up, and that is the fourth song from side number 1. This one is far more upbeat than what came before it. It is a very fast song, and it's more like a traditional rock and roll song, as we'd say. Not heavy metal rock and roll. But yeah, we have Like a Sniper, I've Got My Sights on You, Windscreen Wiper, There Ain't No Spoiling My View, Silver Bandolier, My Profession's Clear, Sharpshooter, 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 hey! And yeah, again, very fast, very hard-hitting number. Really love it. There is a guitar solo in the middle, and I know I've really been praising the guitar solos on this album, and I am probably not going to stop because, just like before, the guitar solo in the middle is still very electric, but like I said, it accompanies the rhythm so well. It's not doing the same thing as the rhythm, obviously, but I just think they jive very, very well together. But then we come to the song Poison, which again, much like Sharpshooter, is a pretty upbeat, pretty fast rock and roll song, much like the style that Motorhead has become accustomed to. But strangely enough, the subject matter of Poison, the lyrics don't fully go along with what the style of song may be suggesting, if that makes any sense. From what I understand, again, this is just what I've researched, It's about how his father left him and his mother and basically abandoned the family and left them on their own to fend for themselves, which actually sounds kind of depressing, actually. But it's a very, very self-reflective song by Lemmy, and so I gotta appreciate it for what it is. But like I said, it sounds far more like a traditional rock and roll song, but the lyrics, again, deal with a very, very serious subject matter. Fatherless homes is nothing to joke about. But again, people tell me you didn't know better, give me sermons about the things I do, come to love them, even wrote letters. You know, I even asked it of you. I said, I've been doing poison. I guess I've been poisoned all my life. I've got my poison. It's better than marrying my wife. Okay, so again, some pretty dark and pretty disturbing lyrics for a very upbeat song. But anyways, that is going to conclude side number 1. What is my favorite from side number 1? Let me make this abundantly clear. I do not think there is a single weak song on side 1. Side 1 absolutely is incredible. Some songs are weaker than others, obviously, but I think Dead Man Tell No Tales is my favorite song from side 1. Another Day, it might be Lawman just because of how heavy and aggressive it is, and it slowed things up a bit, which I do respect, but yeah. Dead Men Tell No Tales is going to be my favorite from side number 1 tonight, and if I change my mind later, well, I'll probably let you know. So let's shoot on over here to side number 2, and it starts off with Stone Dead Forever. And if any of you out there are Metallica fans, you might recognize this song. I know I definitely was into Metallica before I was into Motorhead, and it was actually this that got me into Motorhead initially. This is one of the songs that Metallica covered in the year 1976. They had 4 Motorhead songs they covered. They covered Overkill, Damage Case, Stone Dead Forever, and Too Late, Too Late. And apparently some more Motorhead covers have resurfaced just recently. We had The Chase is Better Than the Catch, and we had We Are the Road Crew, which they actually let Jason Newsted sing. But anyways, Stone Dead Forever is going to kick things off. And you know the road is like dun 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 dun. And then of course the band just keeps progressively coming in, and I think that intro, that don't, I think it's very creative and it's a very well-written rhythm, at least in my opinion. But yes, this one is also very aggressive. I wouldn't quite call it fast. I would still call it mid-tempo and maybe a little bit doomy, but I think it's a really, really hard rocker. Now, of course, the Metallica version was recorded in 1996, so by that point, it definitely was heavier than the Motorhead version, but the Motorhead version is great. But what do we got? You think you see me in the glass? You think you hear me? You better listen fast. I think I see you, gone to seed. The only reason were your guilt and greed. You're out there on your own. Your face is turned to stone. Whatever happened to your life? Stone dead forever. And then, of course, we have the don't. So yeah, I really do like Stone Dead Forever. It's a very classic Motorhead song and one of their all-time bests. So, we are now going to come to the second song from side number 2, All the Aces. And just like many of the other songs on this album, it starts out very fast, but if you're listening to this album for the very first time, it may start to become apparent by this point that Motorhead does have a very particular style, and they love to stick with it for the most part. They do diverge from it a couple of times, but they really have their own style, and they really, it's really part of who they are. At this point, they have written many songs that have a very similar song structure to All the Aces. Now, I do give them credit because they do stick to their guns, they know who they are, just like AC/DC, and I also mentioned this recently when I reviewed Wipeout by Raven. In that review, I also said that about Raven. But yes, these songs do kind of start to run together at some point, and to some, not me, but to some, it may start to grow a little tiresome. But like I said, anyways, putting all that aside, the song is still very heavy and very hard rocking, okay? Again, the band is very in sync with each other. They know who they are. They are there to make a statement. They're there to rock and roll, and I really love it. And again, a very heavy and very aggressive atmosphere, and man, the guitar solos, I have mentioned them many times. They are completely top-notch on this album. So, now that I said that All the Aces was kind of conforming to a style, Step Down is going to go ahead and diverge from that, actually. It's going to kind of do its own thing here. And this is a very, very unique song because Lemmy actually does not sing this one. Now, Lemmy has a very low and grovelly and raspy voice, and it gives these songs a very punk rock feel to it. I don't know if a lot of people really consider these guys to be punk rock. Again, they're more like Chuck Berry, they're just rock and roll. But Step Down is a little bit different, and Lemmy does not sing this one. Instead, Eddie Clarke sings it. And the story behind this is apparently Eddie was very, very upset that Lemmy was getting all the spotlight. I mean, he was writing most of the music. He was basically the quote-unquote frontman of the band, but Lemmy was really starting to get tired of Eddie's constant bitching and nagging. He was tired of him always saying, why does Lemmy get all the credit? Why does Lemmy get all the chicks? Yeah. And so, therefore, Lemmy told him, you are going to sing a song whether you like it or not. And this is a very slow and bluesy song. And again, that might be a turnoff for some people, but I actually do kind of like it, just because it's a change of pace, and it's the band doing something different than everything that came before it. But yes, it starts out with a very bluesy guitar solo, and it sounds a lot more reminiscent of bands like Led Zeppelin, actually, which, again, I really do appreciate. But having said all that, Eddie Clarke is not really the most talented vocalist out there. He's serviceable, I'll say that. He is a solid vocalist, definitely way better than I am, but he's just no Lemmy, and the song just isn't quite the same. It's missing something without Lemmy on lead vocalization. But yes, but despite all that, the story, or the alleged story behind the song Step Down, I just find that really, really hilarious. But then we go to the fourth song, or the ninth song in total, which is called Talking Head. And the intro to this song reminds me a lot of Tear Ya Down off of the Overkill album. Like, I tried my best there. But yeah, it does remind me a lot of Tear Ya Down from the Overkill album. Not by Overkill, but from Overkill. Sorry, a little tongue twisted there. And this really just goes back into what I was saying earlier about a lot of the songs kind of running together and starting to get a little similar. It's got a very swinging and very groovy rhythm at the beginning, but overall, this is one of the more laid-back songs on the album. It's still very heavy. It is still very aggressive. But in comparison to the other stuff on this album, I really have to say it is definitely one of the more laid-back ones. But then, we are going to end the album and the side with the big centerpiece, the very bombastic title track entitled Bomber. And according to Lemmy, this is about a book that was called Bomber, about a bombing raid on Germany during the war by the British. And allegedly, tragically, actually, they hit the wrong town, which I gotta say, I could just say, that's war, but war is a very, very evil thing. It's a very horrible thing, but it happens, and tragically, innocent casualties are taken. But this is the very first song that Lemmy ever wrote about war, and like I said, it's a very bombastic song, and it's actually kind of upbeat, which, much like Poison, we have kind of a contrast here. We have a very, upbeat, almost happy-sounding song, but the lyrics deal with a very, very tragic and very, very serious subject matter. But it's also still very heady, which I like. But ain't Ain't a hope in hell, nothing's gonna bring us down. The way we fly, 5 miles off the ground, because we shoot to kill, and you know we always will. It's a bomber, it's a bomber. And I have heard this song covered many times. This is one of their most iconic songs. It's one of their most well-known songs. And Bomber is a really, really solid song, and I really love it. And man, that intro, I was hooked on the intro from the very beginning when I first heard the song. It's like, do-no-no, do-no-no-no, do-no-no, do-no-no-no-no. And then it just never lets up. It's so fast, so heavy, so incredible. And I have actually liked Bomber ever since I was a kid. So what is my favorite from side number 2? This is kind of a tough one because we have 3 very worthy contenders, Stone Dead Forever, Step Down, and Bomber. The only reason I would ever pick Step Down is just because it's different and tries something unique. And while I do like that, I don't think I'm going to go with Step Down. I'm a little more biased towards Stone Dead Forever because it was one of the very first Motorhead songs I ever heard. Mostly because I was into Metallica at the time. They covered Stone Dead Forever. So obviously that is going to be one of the very first Motorhead songs that I'm going to want to listen to. However, if I'm being completely unbiased, completely serious, completely objective, well, it's my subjective opinion, so I guess I can't call it objective. But anyways, if I'm just being honest with myself, Bomber is going to be my favorite from side number 2, and that may very well be my favorite from the entire album. It's very unusual that the strongest song would come at the end. Usually record companies want them to be at the beginning of either side 1 or side 2. But either way, Bomber is going to be my favorite song from side number 2 and probably the entire album. And that is going to conclude my review of Bomber by Motorhead. So let's flip this right back over. Do I recommend this album? I absolutely do. This is a great album. It's very well written. It's very heavy. It's very aggressive. Do most people like it as much as Overkill or Ace of Spades? I can only speak for myself, but from what I understand, the answer is no. Do I like it as much as those other 2 albums? Maybe, maybe not. I may do a Motorhead album ranking video at some point, but for now, all I can say is that it's a great album. It is a classic Motorhead album. It's a very heavy album, and even if you don't consider this heavy metal, it's very aggressive, and if you're a fan of heavy metal, I think you will really love this album. So anyways, thank you all for joining me tonight. I had a great time talking about this album. Anyways, the subject of my review of my next episode is, as of now, unidentified. But anyways, thank you all very much and have a very pleasant evening.